Thank you, John. Good morning and welcome, everyone. My name is Christina Goodell. I work for California State University, Stanislaus in Turlock, California. And answering your questions today in the Q&A is Jessica Aries, Director of Financial Aid at Palo Alto University in Palo Alto, California. Morning, Jessica. So if you have questions, please use the Q&A, and again, not the chat. Jessica will be happy to get your questions answered as quickly as she can through the Q&A. We also have several other extremely knowledgeable financial aid professionals that are going to be helping us out with the Q&A today. So thank you all for your support. I'm representing, and Jessica's representing, CASFA, the California Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators. And like John said, this morning I'll be presenting on the FAFSA and federal updates. We have quite a bit of information to cover today in a short period of time. So I'll be going through a number of federal updates to the financial aid process. We'll talk a little bit about the FAFSA process itself. And then we're also going to go over some special circumstances that you will most likely encounter when working with your students. So some of the slides we're going to be going through pretty quickly to allow time to cover some of those other topics that generally have a lot of questions around them. And then again, one more thing to add, like John said, both the PDFs for the presentation today have been emailed out. So please check your email for those presentation PDFs. If you haven't received them, reach out to CSAC and they can get them to you. So again, welcome. And I'll go ahead and turn off my camera and we will get started. So first thing, as many of you already know, fafsa.gov has been the website that you will direct your students to complete their FAFSA. With the rebranding of fafsa.gov website, studentaid.gov website, and the My Student Aid mobile app, the Department of Education has now moved to a more consistent platform for all of their products. So students and parents can now see a more common look to the FAFSA regardless of how or where they're connecting. So whether it be a PC, a laptop, a phone, they're all going to have a very similar look now. Along with the website design, Federal Student Aid has also launched the My Student Aid app. And we really encourage students and parents to download the app because it has a ton of great features. Students are going to be able to securely complete their FAFSA and receive important notifications about their account right from their phone. Students and parents will also be able to manage their FSA ID, which is basically their electronic signature that they'll need to sign the FAFSA with in order to complete it. They'll also be able to check their loan and grant history and usage and use the My College Scorecard to compare school data such as annual average costs and graduation rates, all directly from their device. And the My Student Aid app can be downloaded through the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. So again, the Department of Education is now moved to a more consistent platform where students and parents can access all the information and tools through a new and improved interface. They've essentially consolidated multiple websites into a single digital front door, which is now studentaid.gov. And we're not going to play the video, but when you get a chance, we do encourage you to watch it. It's a 4-minute video that explains the digital future of federal student aid. And just one of the digital enhancements that they've made is their virtual assistant, Aiden, who can answer common questions about federal student aid to anyone visiting studentaid.gov. And Aiden is, again, just one of the ways that they're trying to improve access to federal student aid support. Just a reminder on awarding the year-round Pell Grant, that prior to the 17-18 award year, students who attended school full-time in the fall and then full-time in the spring would have used up all or 100% of their Pell Grant eligibility for that particular year. But since then, the Department of Education has implemented something called year-round Pell Grant, which allows the student to receive additional Pell Grant beyond that 100%. So for most students, this means that they now can go to school in a summer term and receive the Pell Grant, thus hopefully allowing the student to complete their degree faster. So when awarding year-round Pell Grant, colleges on a case-by-case basis can determine if it benefits a student enrolled in summer to have their summer session added as what's called a header or a trailer for the fall and spring semester. So without going into too much detail there, we do suggest high school counselors have their high school seniors complete both available FAFSAs. So when your senior sits down to complete their FAFSA in October, they're going to want to complete both of the 2 FAFSAs that will be available at that time. And this is really just in case the student attends college in the summer after graduating. They'll have options there. And of course, if the student has additional questions about your year-round Pell Grant, it's best for them to talk directly with the college financial aid office for more clarification on that. There are some additional updates and enhancements to the federal student aid ID system. So in the past, FSA ID users were only able to log in with a user name or verified email, but students and parents who've created an FSA ID will now be able to log in excuse me, with a verified mobile phone number as an alternative to a username. So to use this feature, a user must first register their mobile phone number on the FSA ID website. And one other thing to point out is that users who enter an email address with a top level domain, such as one of those listed there, .edu, .k12, .pvt, although they can still use these emails, they will receive a warning that they should use another email address that they may not lose access to, as some of these domains may be associated with like their high school or their community college. In addition, passwords will no longer require the use of special characters. However, again, users may still continue to use them. Another enhancement is to the challenge questions, which are, of course, for the students and parents' protection. So another enhancement they've added is an extensive list of challenge questions for students to choose from. So students and parents are going to want to, of course, choose questions and answers that are easy for them to remember, things that don't change, but are hard for others to guess. So the CSS profile, just to go over this briefly, is the College Scholarship Services Profile Form, and it is not a federal or state form, but it's required by primarily private colleges across the US in order to determine a student's eligibility for their institutional aid at that college that they may be able to award. Again, this is not a form that's required to receive federal or student aid. The student is still going to want to complete the FAFSA or the CATA for that, but some colleges that require students to complete this form are Stanford, USC, Claremont colleges, Caltech, St. Mary's College, and there is a $25 fee to complete the form, but students may be eligible to receive a fee waiver. The form comes out around the same time as the FAFSA and the CATA do, and you can find the form, the list of schools that require it, and the information about the fee waiver all on the College Board website, listed down at the bottom of the screen, cssprofile.collegeboard.org. All right, so let's get into the free application for federal student aid, also known as the FAFSA. And then just really quick before we move on to the next slide, I want to point out that there are 2 applications in California that students complete in order for financial aid offices to determine their financial aid eligibility. And they are the FAFSA and the CATA. The CATA is the California DREAM Act application, and the CATA virtually mirrors the FAFSA, but students will either submit one or the other, depending on their citizenship status. So students who are US citizens or permanent residents, they should be filling out the FAFSA. And those students who are undocumented AB 540 students should be completing the CATA, which can be found on dream.csac.ca.gov. Hopefully we can put that link for you guys in the chat. If the student is not sure which application they should use, they can always start with the CATA because it's going to ask several clarifying questions that will help the student determine which application they should be moving forward with. And for today's purposes, I'll be going over the Fafsa specifically, but Dcic will be presenting on the CATA a little bit later in the webinar, so stick around for that. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, fafsa.gov website is still available, but we really want to encourage everyone to start using the studentaid.gov website as the go-to for everything FAFSA. This is where students can complete their initial 22-23 FAFSA. Students can start their FAFSA there. They can save their progress. They can go back in and pick up where they left off. Or if they've already submitted the FAFSA but need to go back in and make corrections, such as making or fixing a mistake on income or tax information or household size, deleting schools, they can do all of that from there as well. The application will be available October 1st for your seniors to start working on, and the priority deadline that they want to meet is March 2nd, 2022 to get that completed. Another important thing to note is that students will then complete a FAFSA renewal each year that they would like to be reviewed for a financial aid award, because information, it can change from year to year. So students and parents are required to go in and fill out the FAFSA each year to be considered for a new award package. And there are several ways to file the FAFSA, but we recommend filing it online because the student's application will be processed a lot faster, and it will most likely be more accurate because the websites that the students file these applications on are designed to catch common errors. The FAFSA website still has 7 sections of what we call FAFSA Fun, although that's probably debatable. There's the student demographics section, school selection section, dependency section, parent demographics, parent financials, student financials, the sign and submit section. Now, we do not have time to cover all 7 sections in this particular workshop, but we're going to focus on the 3 highlighted in red that students often have questions around. So a few tips when completing the school selection section of the FAFSA. Students must list at least one college they plan on attending here. And to search for the college, students can either use that college's school code if they have it, and students can contact the school's financial or the college's financial aid office to get it, or students can simply search by state or city or school name. And students can add up to 10 schools, but for the students who are applying to more than 10 schools, they can still add more if they want to, but by initially completing their FAFSA with the first 10 schools, then once they get their student aid report for that submission, they can go back into the FAFSA, make a correction, remove the initial schools, and add the new ones. The new schools will override the previous schools. So one important thing to keep in mind is that the schools that have been removed will no longer have access to any new or updated information that the student may be putting on the FAFSA, such as a correction to their household. Only schools that are listed on the FAFSA at the time that the correction is made will receive the new information. And this can end up being a little time consuming for students to manage. So we really encourage students to try and narrow down their college list to their top 10 schools. It will make it a whole lot easier for them to manage down the road. Another bit of information is that students do not need to be admitted to any particular school in order for that school to be listed on the FAFSA, and colleges do not need to be listed in any particular order. But schools listed in first in California will be used initially by Dcic for determining Cal Grant eligibility. So we do want to encourage students as a backup plan, even if they don't think that they'll be attending a California college, to list at least one California college on their FAFSA to ensure they're reviewed for Cal Grant eligibility. Because if they don't list a California school on their initial FAFSA, they will be withdrawn from Cal Grant consideration. And they want to have as many options as possible. And this is just a screenshot of what a student's school search function would look like. Students just want to be careful that they are picking the correct schools, as some of the schools have slightly similar names. And it would just indicate the school selected. The student can then add more schools by clicking the Add More Schools button at the bottom right of the screen. Then once they've added all their schools, they would just click Next to move on in the process. Then we get into dependency determination, which determines whose information on the FAFSA the student must report. So generally speaking, if the student answers yes to any of the dependency questions on the FAFSA, they are considered an independent student. If they answer no to all of the dependency questions, they are considered a dependent student. If the student is considered to be dependent, the student will be required to report their and their parents' information on the FAFSA. And if the student is determined to be independent, the student will only be required to put their information on the FAFSA, and not their parents, not their grandparents, not their legal guardians, just their information regardless of age. So let's look at those dependency questions in a little bit more detail. And although the look of the dependency section of the FAFSA is redesigned, the general questions remain the same and are now presented in smaller groups with only 2 to 5 questions on the screen at a given time. So the FAFSA is going to ask if the student is married. Then it's going to go on, it's going to ask the student if they have children that they provide more than half of the support for, or if they have other dependents that they live with and provide more than half of the support for. So most of the students coming out of high school, they're going to be answering no to these questions. But if they answer yes, this means that the student will be considered independent for FAFSA purposes. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that if they answer yes, that they have a child or dependents that they support, and they are under the age of 24, they will most likely be able to need to show documentation to the college that they are in fact providing more than half of the support for that child or dependent, and that support will continue throughout the upcoming school year. And I apologize, the slide here is not updated, but should read the dates of July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023 for the upcoming FAFSA. So just make a note of that. But now when you're working with students, if they have a child, but you find out in talking with them that they're still living with their parents, maybe the parents are still providing housing, they're paying for the utilities, they're paying for food, then typically the parents are still providing the majority of the support and should be included on the FAFSA. So if the student is not providing the majority of their dependents or child support, then in these cases, they need to actually answer no to the child or dependent questions. But of course, if the student has specific concerns or questions on how to answer this question, please have them contact the financial aid office for more clarification on that process. In addition to the marital status and the dependent questions, there are 5 additional questions that are going to be on there. They're going to read, are you currently serving on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces? Are you a veteran at any time since you turned age 13? Were both your parents deceased? Were you in foster care? Were you a dependent or ward of the court as determined by a court in your state of legal residence? Are you or were you an emancipated minor? And then finally, does anyone other than your parent or step-parent have legal guardianship of you as determined by a court in your state of legal residence? So if they answer no to these questions, again, the student will be considered dependent and be required to include their parents' information on the FAFSA. But let's look at some of these more challenging questions in this section that, if they answer yes, can potentially deem them as an independent student for FAFSA purposes. So the first one is foster youth, and the student can answer yes to this question if at any time since the student turned age 13, both parents were deceased or they were in foster care, even if they are no longer in foster care today, because maybe they've been adopted or reunified with their parents, are now considered an adult, which is the age of 18 in the United States. One thing to keep in mind is that college financial aid offices may require the student to provide documentation on that status, which students can simply do by providing their ward of court documentation indicating that they were under the protection of the courts and that usually will be sufficient for that purpose. Emancipated minors are relatively a rare occurrence, but of course can still happen. An emancipated minor is someone who has legally been deemed an adult by a court in his or her state of residence. And the student can answer yes to this question if, as of today, the student is an emancipated minor, or if they were an emancipated minor before they reached the age of being an adult in their state. In this case, where the student is still where the student is still a minor and the court order is no longer in effect, they will actually then answer no to this question. But if they answer yes, they will want to keep in mind again that this is going to be another situation where the college financial aid office is going to most likely reach out to the student to request verification of that status. And in those cases, the student can submit a copy of that court's decision to the financial aid office for review. Legal guardianship, it differs from foster youth in that legal guardianship, it still tries to ensure that the student is in a stable environment, but it usually involves like relative caregivers caring for the child for more extended periods of time, but without cutting those legal ties to parents. Whereas foster care is more of a temporary solution or placement where a social worker will most likely come in and place the child temporarily with a foster family. Legal guardianship is a designation by a court that authorizes someone to care for an individual in place or absence of parents. And legal guardianship, however, does not refer to being in legal guardianship of a student's parents, such as the student is just living with the parents, therefore they are the legal guardian. No, in this case, the student would answer no to the legal guardianship question. In addition to that, students cannot be considered a legal guardian of themselves. So a student can answer yes to this question, however, if it was a court's decision that as of today, the student is in legal guardianship, or if the student was in legal guardianship immediately before they reach the age of being an adult in their state. If the answer is yes, the student will be considered independent and only their information will be required on the Fafsa, only theirs. However, in the case that their legal guardian or maybe their foster parent has legally adopted them, then they are considered a Fafsa custodial parent. The student would need to put no to this question on the Fafsa and provide both their and their adoptive parent. The student would also answer no to this question if they are still a minor and the court decision is no longer in effect at the time the student became an adult. One other thing to point out is that guardianship established by an attorney and not ordered by the court is not considered legal guardianship for Fafsa purposes. So in that case, the student would answer no to that question as well. But if the answer is yes, the college financial aid office will be reaching out to the student requesting documentation, and the student can usually just submit, again, the court order of legal guardianship to fulfill that requirement. If the student is answering no up until this point, they will get to the homelessness question. And in the past, this was a group of 3 questions on the Fafsa regarding homelessness, and it's now been changed to one initial question that if the student answers yes to, they will then get to a second screen that will help them to then determine like who and what agencies will be able to confirm their homelessness status. And I apologize again, the screen here is from last year, so please take note, the date should read on or after July 1st, 2021. Were you homeless or were you self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? The student can be considered homeless, unaccompanied youth, if at any time on or after July 1st, 2021, the student is an accompanied youth who is a homeless accompanied youth or accompanied self-supporting and at risk of homelessness. And homelessness means that they lack fixed and regular and adequate housing, possibly living in shelters. They might be living in parks or motels, campgrounds, cars, abandoned buildings, or maybe they are temporarily, living with other people, kind of skipping from house to house, couch surfing. The term unaccompanied in particular means that the student is not living in the physical custody of their parent. And the term youth means that the student is under the age of 24. And there's a link at the bottom of the screen here to a website that provides additional resources to homeless students. The website is naci.org, which is the National Association for Education of Homeless Children and Youth. So if a student answers yes to this question, they will be considered independent and not be required to include parental information on the FAFSA. However, the College Financial Aid Office may reach out to the student and request verification of their homeless status, which could come from the student's high school or the student's school's district homeless liaison. It could also come from the director of an emergency shelter or transitional housing program funded by HUD. Or it could also come from the director of a runaway or homeless youth basic center or transitional living center. But if the student doesn't have any information or documentation from any of the areas listed above, have them reach out to the college's financial aid office, because a financial aid counselor may be able to talk with the student, get more information about the situation, what's going on, and be able to make that homeless determination within the office there. Most students coming out of high school will mark no to the dependency questions up until this point and be required to place their parents' information on the FAFSA, but there are those rare instances where the student cannot answer yes to any of the dependency questions on the FAFSA, but still they may not be able to provide their parents' information on the FAFSA. These students will still have the option to continue completing and submitting their FAFSA by checking the box there, I am unable to provide information about their parents, which will allow them to move forward. Once they mark that box and click next, they will see this screen, and then the student will be able to skip the parent section and complete their FAFSA. But one important thing to mention is that all colleges listed on the FAFSA will receive the information. However, no expected family contribution or EFC number will be calculated for that student, which will prevent the colleges from being able to award them. So the student will need to contact the college's financial aid office to determine what their process is in order to be officially considered independent due to special or unusual circumstances, sometimes called a dependency override. So some of the examples of special circumstances are provided there on the screen, such as parents are incarcerated, student left home due to an abusive family relationship, or they don't know the whereabouts of their parents and are unable to contact them. However, in the case that the student's parents live in another country, but they still communicate with the parents, they still have access to them, then the student is still required to include their parents' information on the FAFSA to be used to determine their financial aid eligibility. So whose information goes on the FAFSA? Otherwise, a large majority of students coming out of high school, again, will be considered dependent for FAFSA purposes, but often there are questions regarding which parent or parents should be included on the FAFSA. Here's a poster that is available on the website provided there at the bottom of the screen, and it can be printed out for your reference, but it's essentially going to provide a flow chart of some guidance on how some of the most common parent situations take place. So hopefully that can help you and your students most easily determine which parents' information should be included on the FAFSA. So again, who's my parent when I fill out the FAFSA? Let's talk a little bit more about that. I'll read that definition down there. Dependent students are required to report parent information on the FAFSA. For reporting purposes, a parent means your legal, biological, or adoptive parent or step parent, or a person that the state has determined to be your legal parent. So here's part of the flow chart to help determine who's the parent. And the first one's pretty simple. It's going to ask you, are your parents married to each other? If you answer yes, that they're married to each other, then both of their information is going to go on the FAFSA. Pretty simple. If you answer no, your parents are not married, then the next question is going to be, are your parents living together? If you answer yes, let me go down one more. Your parents are living together, but are unmarried. Again, both of their information is going to go on the FAFSA. But if you answer no, your parents are unmarried and they are not living together, the next question is going to be, did you live with one parent more than the other over the past 12 months? If you answer yes, then that parent that you resided with the most will be the FAFSA parent. But if you answer no to that question, then it's going to ask you which parent provided the most financial support over the last 12 months or in the last year that the student received support. And whoever, in that case, it's going to be the parent who provided the most financial support. So basically, in these cases where the student's biological parents are divorced, the student needs to first determine which parent is going to be considered the FAFSA parent by some of those previous questions. If the parent is deemed, whichever parent is deemed as the FAFSA custodial parent, if they are not remarried, then of course only their information is going to go on the FAFSA as a parent. But in the case that the FAFSA parent has been remarried, their information along with their spouse's information, the student's step parent, in that case, both of their information will need to be placed on the FAFSA. We also want to clarify who is not a parent for FAFSA purposes. The following people are not considered parents on the FAFSA unless they have legally adopted the students. First one is widowed step parent. Grandparents are not considered parents for FAFSA purposes. Foster parents, legal guardians, older brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles. We have actually had students put aunts and uncles or siblings because they've been taking care of them for years. They've listed them on the FAFSA as their parent, but only biological or legally adoptive parents can be considered a FAFSA custodial parent. If you have students whose parents are not in the US, again, but the student still has a relationship with them and they can be reached either by fax, by internet, by mail, then those biological parents do need to complete their section of the FAFSA. And just one thing to point out is if they don't have a valid social security number, they can print out the signature page, the parent signature page, or maybe the student can send them a hard copy of it if that's easier for the parent. The parent can then sign it and mail it to the address on the form for processing. International postal mail can be slow, so if it is at all possible, students may want to have their parents scan that signed parent signature page and email it to the student so that the student can mail it back to the Department of Education from within the US. And that should reduce the turnaround time quite a bit. But if your student can't reach their parents, either their location is unknown, or maybe it's not safe to communicate with them, as we discussed earlier, the student may be able to contact the college that they plan on attending to request a dependency override. And those are done on a case-by-case basis, so keep that in mind. Many colleges have a form, they have provided suggested verifying documentation that the student can submit to begin that process. So next we'll talk about the IRS data retrieval tool, or the IRS DRT, which is a tool that's built into the FAFSA where students and parents can import their tax and income information directly from the IRS's database right onto the FAFSA instead of having to manually enter all of that information. Using the IRS DRT is highly recommended because it can simplify and streamline the process by reducing errors on the FAFSA. It can save time if the student happens to be selected for that process called verification, where the financial aid office usually asks for documentation to verify the accuracy of the FAFSA. There are some other instances where the student or parent is not able to use this tool, such as the cases where the student or the parent do not have a social security number, or due to the student or parent being a victim of identity theft. In addition, parents who are married but filed their taxes separately, such as one parent filed head of household, the other parent filed single, they will also not be able to use the IRS DRT. Nor will parents who are unmarried but living together. But if you want to look at and see a full list of the reasons and scenarios why they wouldn't be able to use it, that list is on studentaid.gov. But if the parent or student tries to use the IRS DRT but runs into an issue, it's not letting them, they'll just need to go in and unfortunately have to manually enter that tax and income information. One other thing to note is that when using the IRS DRT is that there has been some issues with IRA rollover information being reported incorrectly through that tool. So if the student used the IRS DRT and notices an unusually high EFC, or if they feel like they already know that there's a rollover that's going to be reported, they can contact the financial aid office to see if there's any errors with that transfer of information. So here are just a few common mistakes that we see that we want students to be aware of and watch out for. Mistakes are primarily due to the students just simply not reading the definitions and instructions carefully. Students and parents should read and understand the definitions of key terms such as legal guardianship, because that's a common error where many students are incorrectly reporting yes to this question, believing they are in legal guardianship of their parents. But if they would have read the definition of legal guardianship, they would probably have better understood what the question was asking. Another common error is incorrectly reporting parents' information, because a lot of students believe that if they're fully supporting themselves, paying their own bills, they're independent for Fafsa purposes. But a majority of these students are still going to be considered dependent for Fafsa and be required to include their parents' information on the Fafsa, unless of course there's this, one of those extenuating circumstances like the ones we talked about going on. Head of household tax filing status is also error prone and can be an issue because parents who are legally married but filing separately, like one parent filed head of house, the other filed single for tax purposes, then this will often be questioned by the college financial aid office because married individuals should be filing married. So if the parent or student incorrectly filed head of household status on their tax return, the financial aid office may be required to have the student or parent work with their tax professional to file an amendment to their tax return and correct that filing status before financial aid can be dispersed. Determining the number of people in the Fafsa household can also be tricky for students as well. Household size is always going to at least include the student, but it will also include their spouse if they're married and their children if they provide the majority of the support for them. But dependent students will need to include themselves, of course. They'll need to include their custodial parent or parents. They'll also need to include their parents' other children, even if they're over the age of 24 and live outside of the household, if their parents are still providing the majority of their support. Parents should also be including other people who aren't their children, but live with them in that household who receive the majority of their support from the parent. And this would be regardless of who claims who on the tax return. There's a little misconception there. Fafsa does not look at the tax return dependent information to determine who can be included in the Fafsa household. Also, parents should be careful when they are completing the Fafsa on behalf of their student, as there's often confusion as to who the you and your refer to in the questions on the form. The words you and your will always refer to the student. In addition, students should always be careful when entering names, dates of birth, social security numbers on the Fafsa, because errors on those key personal identifiers can cause major delays in the processing of the student's award. Also, not including the school on the student plans on attending can cause some issues. not using the IRS data retrieval tool when they can, not providing the student's parents' net worth of assets can also delay the awarding process. So students should be encouraged to still try to narrow down their list of schools they plan on attending, but they can still, of course, list all possible schools and colleges on the FAFSA that they are considering. Even if they're only backup plans, they can still do that. And when entering asset information, keep in mind that the FAFSA asset question specifically asks about asset values as of the day that the student completes the FAFSA. So that's as of the day the student completes the FAFSA, what are the values of the assets? Whereas tax and income information requested on the FAFSA is asking still 2 years prior. So there's the difference there. Cash, savings, checking balances are all assets that need to be reported, as do the net value of any assets outside of retirement accounts, such as investments, stocks and bonds, CDs, money markets. Retirement accounts are students' and parents' primary residence should not be reported. However, the net value of second homes, like rental properties, do need to be reported. And just remind you what the net value is. That's the difference between the current market value minus any outstanding mortgages on the property. In addition to the net value of the parent's business must be reported as well. And the FAFSA definition of a business that must be reported are those businesses that have fewer than 100 employees. So the majority of our FAFSA parents that have businesses still don't have to report them because they have less than 100 employees. So if your parent's business has 100 or fewer employees, then they do not need to report that value on the FAFSA. 529 accounts, those are probably the most complicated in determining how to report them. But if the custodial 529 account owner is a dependent student or the dependent student's parent, the 529 plan is going to be reported as the parent's asset on the FAFSA. Distributions should be ignored in that case. If the parents have 529 accounts for other dependent students, they would need to include the total value of all accounts combined as their asset, as the parent's asset. And if the 529 account owner is an independent student, the 529 plan is reported as the student's asset. And again, the distribution should be ignored for those as well. But in the case that the account owner is anyone other than the student or the parent, such as a grandparent, the 529 plan is not reported as an asset at all on the FAFSA, but the distributions will count as untaxed income to the student in upcoming years. And it's important to make sure that these get reported correctly, because if the 529 value is reported under the student section instead of the parent section incorrectly, that could negatively and significantly affect the student's EFC calculation much more than it would if it was reported correctly under the parent's asset information. So here are some other problems that we see that can delay the processing of the FAFSA. The student's name and social security number should be entered exactly as they appear on the social security card. If the student enters the wrong name, it's usually pretty easy to go back onto the FAFSA and recorrect it and sign it. But if the student is entering incorrect social security numbers or incorrect date of birth, this can be harder to fix. In these cases, students will only be able to fix it by entering the correct information on a student aid report and submitting it to federal student aid, or by filing a new FAFSA. And in many cases, completing a new FAFSA is going to be the easiest and quickest way to make the corrections. But this should, however, be less and less of an issue as students, they should be using their FSA ID to start their FAFSA, because their information it's already going to be confirmed as accurate during the FSA ID creation process. Students should also be completing their FAFSA by March 2nd, by the March 2nd priority deadline, to be reviewed for as much financial aid as possible. Students who do not meet that deadline may miss out on receiving state grants. So although the FAFSA is available after March 2nd to complete, students should really be making a priority to get that submitted before March 2nd. Another issue we often see that holds up the awarding process is the Fafsa is missing a parent signature, which will again prevent the student from being eligible to receive an award. We see this in particular with students, mainly in particular with students whose parents do not have a valid social security number because they were not able to create an FSA ID and electronically sign the FAFSA. So these students will want to start the FAFSA process as early as possible because their parents are going to need to print out and sign that parent signature page and mail it off to the Department of Education, which can unfortunately delay the awarding process by weeks. Again, parents without a social security number, they will unfortunately, again, not be able to create that FSA ID and electronically sign the FAFSA. In these cases, when the parent and student get to the signature section of the FAFSA, they can select the option down at the bottom of the screen, other options to sign and submit. And just one of the parents will need to print out and sign the parent signature page, mail it off to the financial or the federal student aid or Department of Education for processing. Here are some changes that are coming down the road with FSA. So back in June, Federal Student Aid announced that there will be a phased-in approach to the implementation of the Fafsa Simplification Act, which passed on December 27th, 2020, as part of the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021. What this means is that there's going to be a significant overhaul of federal student aid, which includes the FAFSA and many other policies and procedures for schools that participate in Title IV programs. It would take too long to get into the details of all the changes, but if you would like to take a look at them, you can go to the website listed there below, and we'll also try to put that link into the chat for your reference if someone could kindly add that link to the chat. Otherwise, you can also find this information by going to fsapartners.ed.gov. Then you can go to their knowledge base center and search Fafsa Simplification Act. But we do want to talk about a couple things that may affect your students' eligibility now for the 21-22 and 22-23 award years, and those are to the selective service and drug conviction questions. For the 21-22 and the 22-23 award years, these questions will still be on the FAFSA, but they are no longer going to affect a student's eligibility criteria. So that means your student, if you have a student who's male between the age of 18 and 25, and they did not register for selective service, they can still get federal funding. Regarding the drug conviction question, this question doesn't really apply or affect to most students coming out of high school anyways, because the question reads, while receiving financial aid, were you ever convicted of possessing or selling illegal drugs? So this question will also be on the FAFSA, but will no longer affect eligibility either. But for the 23-24 award year, the Department of Education plans to completely remove both the selective service and drug conviction questions entirely from the FAFSA, as well as the option to register with selective service via the FAFSA. If you have questions, or actually if you have workshops coming up, here are some suggestions we have. You'll want to have the parent come in with the student to your workshops, because students often will not have all the information that they need, such as social security numbers, tax and income information, asset information. Students and parents completing the FAFSA by themselves have a much higher probability of error, so you'll want to encourage both students and parents to sit down together and get it completed. Secondly, we also encourage that students and parents get their FSA ID process completed before they sit down to complete that FAFSA. Since the FAFSA doesn't come out until October, this may be something that you can even start working on with your students now, for those, and have ready for those upcoming workshops. All right, so I'm just going to have to wrap up here and go through these next few slides pretty quickly. The FAFSA demo site It's a learning tool that's available to help increase understanding of the FAFSA. There's a website there. The demo site test system should be available September 26th. There's a ton of other resources where you can find this on financialaidtoolkit.ed.gov. And I believe today, September 1st, the FAFSA preview presentation with those screenshots of what the 22-23 FAFSA looks like should also be available there too. So check it out. So we'll talk real briefly about the financial aid process. It's a cycle. First, the student is going to complete their FAFSA or CATA, receive their student aid report, which they're going to run a review because it has important information on it. Colleges will receive a similar document. They will notify students about their eligibility if they need to submit additional documentation. So students should be checking their email and student portal as soon as they have access to it and check it frequently. Once the student is awarded, the school will notify them and the student will then want to contact the school if they have questions about accepting or understanding their award. And then that process starts all over again every year that the student would like to receive financial aid. And here's just a quick overview of the types of federal aid programs that are out there for students. Federal Pell Grant, FSEOG Grant are two federal grants awarded to undergraduate students who demonstrate financial need. The Federal Work Study Program provides part-time employment to students while they're enrolled in college. There are federal direct loans are considered financial aid, so that's a misconception. They are financial aid, and there are two types of loans available for undergraduate students, the subsidized and the unsubsidized. Students need to qualify for the subsidized because if they do demonstrate enough need for that, their interest will be covered for them while they're in school. The unsubsidized, on the other hand, the student does not need to qualify for that one, so the interest will be accruing pretty much right as it disperses. Lastly, there's also a federal Parent Plus loan parents can take out on behalf of their student to help cover those educational expenses. And if you'd like to learn more about these federal programs, go to studentaid.gov and click the Understanding Aid link at the top of the screen. So now we'll just talk briefly about some special circumstances that are topics, of course, that you're going to be most likely encountering with your students and guide your students on. For example, there may be a financial hardship that the family is experiencing, a loss of employment, expected medical bills. So these students will want to complete the FAFSA, using the tax and income information that the FAFSA is requesting, but then contact the financial aid office to request a special circumstances if the finances have changed, if their financial situation has changed from when the 2019 or 2020 income and tax information is reported to what's going on, what the current situation is. Or maybe there's a dependency issue that needs to be determined. So as counselors, we want to talk with our students to better understand their unique situations and help guide them through that process. And here are some of those possibilities that fall under special circumstances. Again, reduction of income due to reduced hours, loss of employment, maybe there was loss of benefits, marital status changes. Most colleges now have an entire website dedicated to just applying for special circumstances. So you and your student may be able to find what you need if you check out that particular school's financial aid website for more information on that. Reference material to help high school counselors and college financial aid staff. Federal Student Aid has created Financial Aid Toolkit, again, which is available on the website listed there, financialaidtoolkit.ed.gov. You'll be able to find a ton of helpful information like ready to go financial aid PowerPoint presentations, brochures, pamphlets, flyers. You can even tailor your search to the audience you're working with or the specific topic you want to cover. So we want to encourage you to take a look at that website. Federal Student Aid also has a strong social media presence now. It is on Twitter, they're on Facebook, and they want to encourage counselors to retweet or share their posts. So they also have a YouTube channel with several playlists on college prep, financial aid topics, including the FAFSA. So it may be a good idea for you, for your students to follow their social media, even if you put their Twitter feed on maybe your website, because they do update that on a regular basis. And for additional assistance for your students, here are a couple important websites and phone numbers. Studentaid.gov, of course, has a help center that offers a wide variety of resources to students. Student Aid, help.ed.gov provides online assistance with FAFSA process as well. They'll also, they have contact information, they have a chat feature. The 1-800-4FED-AID is the main number for federal student aid Monday through Saturdays most of the year. We also encourage you to print out the FAFSA paper application and have it handy, have it ready for those questions that come up when you're talking with your students, because the wording, it can clarify a lot of the questions that you have. Okay, so I see we're at the point where we may have time for a few questions that are still out there with the last minute or two that we have.
Christina, it's
Yes.
Luann. I
Hi,
do
Luann.
have some questions that I don't know that I answered correctly or I told them I would ask.
Okay.
So challenge questions, are they case sensitive when they're doing their FSA ID?
Oh, that is a good question.
Does anybody, any of Anna Faye, Jessica, Dcic folks know the answer to that?
That is a good question. We can research it and we can probably include that as one of the Q&A.
Oh, Griselda says it is case sensitive, so
Oh,
she
okay.
must have experienced. So my response was students should just write down exactly how they answer it and then use that when they have to do it again.
Right.
The other question was, can the feds accept a scanned image of a wet signature for the parents on the FAFSA? Or does it have to be an original one sent in, mailed in?
That's a good question too. I'm not sure. I know that there's been a lot of flexibilities that have been put in place due to COVID, but I haven't come across that one in particular.
David Levy says challenge questions are no longer case sensitive. You know what? Just to be safe, students should write down exactly how they answer it and keep that as cheat sheets. And then,
Luann?
yeah. Go ahead.
This is Jessica. I just recently experienced this regarding the signature. The feds still, if you're postal mailing a signature, it has to be a wet signature.
Okay, good to know. That's what I
Yes.
thought.
Yeah.
Thank you. So did everybody catch that? Hopefully that got through.
Yeah, we do. We recommend students to keep all of their financial aid, important documentation, maybe have a folder, their financial aid folder, where they keep all their passwords, all their user name information, so they can refer back to it.
And that was it for me. Did anybody else have, Jessica or Anna Faye or Dcic folks, have any other questions that we need? There's a lot of questions and people want to know more about assets and income. We just don't have time to go over that.
Right,
I think
right.
the Cash for College PowerPoints will have a much better view of that. And David also said that the actual screenshots of the FAFSA on the web is available in the toolkit, I believe, right now. It went live today. So if you want a 300-page PowerPoint or PDF of every single screenshot of FAFSA on the web, you can download that to help your students complete it. I would say my suggestion, you've got to read the instructions on the FAFSA. Most of the questions you asked us, if you just print out a PDF and read it, it's very black and white, it's very literal. So try that first. And if that doesn't answer your question, then reach out to your local college to ask them.
Okay. Okay, can we start the recording? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adrian. I'm here with my colleagues. We're so glad you're here with us today. As you can see, I am real behind me. I wish I was in San Francisco, but unfortunately I'm not. But I'm here with you guys today. We're going to go ahead and keep this rolling because, again, we want to be mindful of your time here. So let's go ahead and without any further ado, let's jump into our presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and put this down and I'm going to stop my video. But as we always like to say, welcome back. We wish we could be there in person. I know I'm speaking for all of us. We wish we could be there in person with you guys. but we are, again, because of the current situation, we are virtual still, but hopefully one day we will be able to get back and see you guys in person. As we always do, we do want to go ahead and thank our partners, because without their help, we would not be able to put on this presentation as we do. It is a partnership between the California Community College Student Financial Aid Administrators Association, who say that 3 times fast, and CASFA, the California Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators. Again, without their help, we would not be able to have the material on the FAFSA and also our presenters. So again, thank you so much for all of their help, because without that, we would not be able to put this on for you guys. So this is our agenda for today. We will start with some updates, because there are some big updates that are coming down. We will then move into our commission programs. Then we will go into high schools doing your part. We will also talk about our California DREAM Act application. And then, as we always do, at the end, we will leave you with some of our resources. So if I could have our poll pulled up here. All right, so you should see the poll, and what we're asking is, how many of these workshops have you attended either in person in the past or virtually? So we're going to give you about 40 seconds here. I'm already seeing a lot of responses here. Okay, and I'm seeing it's pretty neck and neck here. Give it a few more seconds. All right, looks like we have about 72%. Let's see, get a few more responses here. All right, so again, it does look like we have a lot of variety here, and it looks like we have a lot of new first-time people. Thank you so much for attending today. And again, we also have a lot of returning 2 to 3, 4 to 5, and also we have a 6+. Thank you so much for, again, continuing to come and participate. All right, so let's jump on in and talk about some of these new updates that we have for you. So the first is our grant delivery system monetization. And this is where we have been able to spruce up our the student portal, which is our web grants for students. We've also updated our web grants, the platform that is for the institutions and high schools. What I like to say is, basically what we were able to do is we were able to bring our system out of the 80s and into the 2000s. And I do make a joke. It's kind of like we've been riding that 1990s Honda Accord, you know, and finally we got that new Tesla. We have the new system smell. So we are, again, continuing to march forward, because very shortly here, we're going to also introduce our updated California DREAM Act application, which will bring us full circle in the updating of all of our systems. We also have we'll talk about it, the California Community College Cal Grant expansion. We will also talk about the California Dreamer Service Incentive Grant, our students with dependent children. Also new, our foster youth Cal Grant expansion, the Golden State Teacher Grant Program, also award increases for our private nonprofit institutions. We also have a nice chat bot feature where you can, or students can ask our system some questions. And last but not least, we'll definitely, again, give you a little bit of information about Cal Grant reform that is currently being talked about. So part of the resources that we sent to you is a spreadsheet that has information and links that correspond with the presentation. So you can, again, go ahead and either view those now or later. And again, if you did not receive the resources, again, it is available on our webpage under our resources. So, as I was stating, the new grant delivery system monetization has replaced and upgraded our previous systems. Now, we are, again, still working on several aspects. And the last one, again, is our California DREAM Act application. But we have already done our web grants for students portal, our Chaffey application, and the web grants for institution. We have, again, made it a whole lot better, and especially for those of you that have been around for the last few years, you definitely understand it is night and day. We really have come into the 2000s from the old system, which was a little what my coworker John likes to term a little clunky. But again, it is great. So if you haven't yet, please go ahead, take a look at it, because again, you will be surprised and it is great. Now, one of the biggest things that I really think that we want to point out is the new awards, and it is called the Cal Grant expansion for our community college students. So what happened is we received, as you can see, $155.4 million to remove barriers. And what I like to say is it created a new entitlement program for students that are attending the California community colleges. Because previously, we only had two entitlements, and that was our high school entitlement, so our current year seniors and last year seniors, and then our transfer entitlement for students that were transferring from a California community college to a four-year. But this additional funding has again made it so we have a third entitlement, which is for any student that attends a California community college. As long as they meet our basic requirements, they are entitled to a Cal Grant while they're at the community college. So this is going to greatly increase the number of students that we can provide financial aid to. Now, one thing that it also has done is it has made a change in our competitive program. In the past, that program had over 25,000 awards, but because of this expansion, we have actually had to reduce that number. But it's I don't want to say double-edged sword, but in a good way, because basically research showed us that a majority of those competitive awards went to students at the California Community College. But the thing is, they had to compete. There was that uncertainty for those groups of students. But now, because they are now guaranteed an award through our new entitlement program, again, the number of our awards has dropped from 41,000 to 13,000. But again, we are now with these with these competitive awards, we will just be servicing any student that is outside of those three entitlements that I just spoke of. Now, one other thing with the new expanded community college entitlement award is if a student receives that award while at their community college, they can take that award with them if they have remaining eligibility, if they then transfer to a UC or CSU. But if that student transfers to a private, they would then actually need to go through our transfer entitlement program if eligible. And then if they are not eligible for that, then they would then be considered through our competitive program. So that is some of the changes that this program has done. And lastly, I want to point out that also they are not tied to the March 2nd deadline per se. We still want them to apply by that March 2nd deadline, but they have until September 2nd to apply and still be eligible to be considered for this award, again, if they will be attending a community college. Now, as I did state, again, they have to, again, meet our eligibility criteria. And like for any Cal Grant, they must have a GPA. And that GPA must be a 2.0 or better. And they can use a high school GPA if it is, now, again, it could be your high school kiddos, but with the community college award, it is not tied to any age. So you may have returning students. And if they are returning students, they would need to either submit a community college GPA. If they do not have a community college GPA, if they have attended, or well, they are within 5 years of graduation of high school, they can go back and get the high school GPA. And if they are outside of that 5 years and are returning, they would, and do not have a community college GPA, they would also need to, in lieu of a GPA, they can use test scores from the ACT or SAT, HiSET, or TASC tests. Again, I already alluded that, again, they must apply no later than September 2nd, but as we always do, we do want to promote and have our students fill out their applications as early as possible, and hopefully before that March 2nd deadline. Again, I have already spoke about it, but again, they can take these awards with them once they are ready to transfer from the community college if they are transferring to a UC or CSU. And again, if they are transferring to a private institution, they would have to go through our transfer entitlement program. And if they are not eligible for transfer entitlement, they can, again, receive consideration through our competitive Cal Grants. Next, we're going to talk about the California DREAM Act Service Incentive Grant Program, or Dcic. Now, this program does encourage our DREAM Act students that have a Cal Grant B award to perform community or volunteer service. And if they do so, they can be awarded up to $3,000 per academic year. And that, again, is split over either the semester or quarter. So at a semester, it would be $1,500. And if they're at a quarter school, $1,000 per term. And this, again, will be available up to 8 semesters or 12 quarters while they have their Cal Grant B award. The commission does require that the student performs at least 100 hours if they're at the quarter school, or 150 hours at a semester-based school of that community or volunteer service. And again, the award will then be awarded to them once they have actually completed those hours. Now, we do have a list of eligible volunteer or community service where they can, again, complete these hours. And that is on our website, as you can see on the bottom. Now, this is, again, that is a new program that is being implemented this year, and it opened on July 1st of this year. and will continue through June 30th of the next year, 2022. I know all of you guys understand we operate in 3 different academic years. So sometimes I'm like thinking to myself, okay, which year am I in? Am I 38 this year or am I 39? Just joking. Again, it will, again, as we already spoke about, allow those California Dream Act students with a Cal Grant B, again, to get paid additional monies for, again, volunteer or community service. One very important aspect of this program is it is a first come, first serve program. So again, we really want, and again, we already do this, but we really want to, again, stress to our students, especially our Dream Act students that may be considering this, to, again, apply as early as possible, because again, it's first come, first serve. So again, I know we already do it, but again, really stress to the students, hey, there is a benefit to applying early. And again, this is brand new, so we're going to have to do a little bit of, I guess you can say, advertising to our Dream Act students. So again, let them know, hey, there is additional monies out there for you guys, but you need to get your applications done as soon as possible, as close to October 1st as possible, so you can, again, possibly have this opportunity. Because again, I know it's been some years, but I remember it's still, I mean, any money when you're going to school is very valuable. But again, because of the limited resources of this program, again, we really want to stress to these students, hey, we need to get this done early. So again, you can possibly be, eligible. Now, this program has been with us, I believe, the last 2 years, and it is our students with dependent children. Now, this again is another program that will provide additional funding to students that have dependent children. Now, to be eligible, students need to be attending a public institution. So that's our UCs, CSUs, and community colleges. And if they are attending one of these colleges and again have a dependent child under the age of 18 for whom they are providing more than, and that's very important, more than 50% of that child's support can qualify. Now, we initially determine eligibility using the question on the financial applications, the FAFSA or Dream Acts, that says, do you now have or will you have children who will receive more than half of their support from you? If they are eligible, they can receive up to $6,000 additional dollars with a Cal Grant A and B, and $4,000 with a Cal Grant C. Now, one of the things that it also does is, traditionally, our Cal Grant A does not have an access award. It only pays tuition and fees. But if a student has the Cal Grant A and is attending a community college, what this does is, because traditionally that student, if they did not qualify for this program, would not be able to use their award until they transfer to a four-year school that charges tuition and fees. But because this program does add an access portion to the Cal Grant A, it will allow that student at the community college to use that $6,000 or up to that $6,000 in additional benefits while at the community college. Now, this is a brand new additional program, and this will serve our current or former foster youth that are attending a public institution, and they will then be eligible to receive additional benefits. Now, it kind of mirrors, or I won't say kind of, it does mirror the award amounts that our student with dependents does, as you can see, 6,000 for A and B and 4,000 for Cal Grant C. Now, this is again an enhanced access award to provide additional support for foster youth students. And also it, what's the word I want to use? Well, actually, I'll say it this way. The student can receive the additional access, and if they are also eligible for our Chaffey Grant program, if they have enough unmet need, they can use both awards together at the same time. Now, one thing I do want to point out is if the student is foster youth and has a child or a dependent, they cannot use both the foster youth access and the students with dependents. And what will happen is our system will actually award them the foster youth award. And if at any point they then are not eligible for the foster youth award, then our system would then revert back and give them the student with dependent. So again, they would be able to maximize their award, but they just can't, I guess the term would be double dip. Next is our Golden State Teacher Grant Program, and it encouraged our students to consider earning a teaching credential and teach in a high need field at a priority school in California for 4 years. And they also must do this within 5 years after completing their credentialing. So if they are eligible, the commission will award eligible students $20,000 up to 4,400 eligible students. Again, they must be enrolled in a teaching credentialing approved preparation program on or after January 1st, 2020. So what will happen is the student must agree to all the terms and conditions of the program that I just spoke about, because if they do not do that, unfortunately, they would then be required to repay that grant. Now, I did say high needs. So I'm using my psychic abilities here, and you're probably saying, what are those fields? Those fields are special education, multiple subject instruction, transitional kindergarten or TK, bilingual education, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, STEM, which includes computer science and career technical education, and other teaching preparation programs that are approved. So if you have any questions, or well, let's say a student has a question, if the field that they're going in is considered high needs, they can contact us at this email address here, goldenstateteachers@csac.ca.gov for additional information and also how to apply. We also talked about in the overview that we have increased the award amounts at our private nonprofit institutions. In the past, the award amount was $9,084, but this has been increased by $136 to $9,220. This is new for the Cal Grant Awards. And again, this is also eligible for any student that is renewing at a private nonprofit institution. This is our chat bot. And once the student or even parent goes to our website, our main page here, they will see this new feature. This is in order to better assist students with their questions. The chatbot can answer many questions that a student may have about the Cal Grant award or our application. Now, we are constantly updating the functionality and adding more knowledge to this chatbot. So again, if students have questions, direct them to our website. And again, our chatbot is ready to answer questions 24/7. Last but not least, on the updates, we want to update you again about the conversation about Cal Grant reform. Now, this has been something that's been going on for years, but we wanted to just give you an update of what's being talked about at the Capitol. One bill that's being kicked around is called AB 1456. This bill would reform the current Cal Grant program and middle-class scholarship so that state financial aid reaches more students and provides, again, a higher level of financial assistance. Now, some of the changes that the bill would do, it would eliminate some of the eligibility requirements that what's the word I want to pose a block or a hindrance to older students from accessing Cal Grant awards. Also, it would remove the grade point average verification that has to be done for community college students. And lastly, would use new federal student aid index to determine the level of financial need. Now, we've just talked about a whole slew of changes that are aimed at providing additional funding to students. But as I am a very big proponent of, there's never, there's more that can be done. And that's what this bill aims to do. But I do want to, say this is, again, just in the proposal and the talking phases down at the Capitol. So hopefully either this passes or maybe it sparks more conversations and will provide I don't want to say leverage, but be able to advance, there we go, to advance the conversation and ultimately bring us to a more simplified or allowing more access, again, for students to, again, financial aid. So again, stay tuned. All right. Next on the docket here is Assembly Bill 469. And this bill now requires local educational agencies to confirm that all seniors complete a FAFSA or DREAM Act application unless the student completes an opt-out form. The bill will allow certain types of nonprofit agencies, such as legal service organizations and immigrant resource centers, to assist with this new completion requirement. It will also require data sharing between the California Student Aid Commission and the California Department of Education to, again, monitor the compliance. Financial aid completion requirements establishes the academic year of 22-23 as when local agencies must conform. I'll use conform. That high school students, again, are completing these applications or, again, using the opt-out form if they do not want to fill out the application. All right, so that is our updates. So without any lag here, let's go ahead and shift gears. And we have a little overview here of our commission programs. So the applications, dates, and programs. So as always, everything starts with completion of either the FAFSA or DREAM Act application. And I do want to give, if I could take 30 seconds here. One thing when you are talking to students about completing a FAFSA, if you could do us a favor, this is something that we've talked about over the past years in our presentations and webinars. Please go ahead and, without even skipping a beat, when you say FAFSA, also say or California DREAM Act application, because the California DREAM Act application serves the cohort of students that are not eligible to complete a FAFSA. So we really want them to know that there are these two applications. And if there is any type of, if the student doesn't know, which one do I need to fill out, direct them to the DREAM Act website, because we do have a little eligibility checker that will ask the student questions regarding, their status, and then it will let them know, hey, you should fill out the FAFSA, or hey, you should fill out the DREAM Act. And something else also, they need to fill out one or the other, not both, because another thing sometimes what a student will do is they'll complete both applications, but that is not what they need to do. They just need to fill out one or the other. So there are two dates to keep in mind here when it comes to the application process. And the first is our March 2nd priority deadline. Now, this deadline ensures that all students, and that's again your seniors, your last year seniors, your returning adult students, that they get processed for all of our award types and award cycles. This deadline will ensure that, it could be, hey, maybe you're not eligible for, sorry about that. All right, so if they again apply by that March 2nd deadline, this allows the student to be processed for Cal Grant middle class scholarship, because sometimes the student may be eligible for one, and during the academic year, they may become ineligible. But because, because they met that March 2nd deadline, we could seamlessly run their eligibility for the other. So I was Cal Grant eligible. For whatever reason, I lost eligibility, but I may be eligible for middle class scholarship. And because I met the deadline, the system will do this without skipping a beat. Also, it does do both of our entitlement and competitive awards, because as you'll see in the next screen here, we only have one date for our competitive students, and that's our March 2nd deadline. And finally, this is also the final day that high schools can upload GPAs, because as we know, the application, FAFSA or DREAM Act application, is nothing without a GPA. So again, for the high school counselors out there, again, just remember this also is an important date for you with regards to, again, uploading of GPAs. Now, September 2nd used to be an actual its own cycle, but because of the new California Community College Entitlement Award, it's no longer like a deadline, but it is the last day that a student would be able to, again, finish their application, and if attending that community college, be eligible to be processed for that new entitlement award. Again, we've already talked about, again, they can receive that entitlement award at the community college. And once they are ready to transfer, if they're going to a UC or CSU, they will be able to maintain that award to their new institution. But if they do decide to go to a private, they would have to go through our transfer entitlement or competitive Cal grant. But that's also why March 2nd is, again, very important, because if they are thinking about, again, transferring to a private, they need to have, again, applied by March 2nd to ensure that, again, they can be processed for our transfer entitlement or competitive Cal grant. So again, remember that we are not even, I can't even remember exactly the number of years, but it's been a while, but we are, again, always using what we call the prior year tax information to fill out their application. So because we are, well, it will be opening up October 1st. We will be opening up the aid year of 22-23, which means we will be using tax information from the 2020 tax year. This is a quick snapshot of our award amounts at the different institution types. We also do have a Cal Grant video that goes more in depth on the award types and their award amounts. So again, if you're all caught up on your Netflix or Hulu, go ahead, hop on YouTube and watch our video. Our middle class scholarship, I kind of touched on it, but not in detail. So with our middle class scholarship, this again is for students that will be attending a UC, CSU, or a California community college that offers a bachelor's program. And what this does is it will allow a student that is not eligible for income purposes for a Cal grant to be considered for the middle class scholarship. But again, they need to ensure that, number one, that they applied by the March 2nd deadline. That's why, again, it is very important that we get these kiddos to, and you kind of see the thread here, that we get them to fill out these applications early, and definitely no later than March 2nd, because by doing so, there is plenty of things that we can, process the student for. The middle class scholarship is, again, an award at these schools that will provide up to 35% of their tuition and fees. And for this year, the income and asset ceiling is set at $191,000. And as you can see on the screen, are the maximum award amounts a student may be potentially eligible for at the CSU and UC campuses. We also have our Chaffey Grant, and this is available to current and former foster youth who were dependent or wards of the court living in foster care for at least one day between the ages of 16 and 18. If the student is eligible for the Chaffey Grant, they can receive up to $5,000 per year. And these monies can be used for anything: tuition and fees, rent, food, transportation, going out and getting some McDonald's because they're tired of eating top ramen all day. The main thing, again, is this is money that can be used in any way that the student sees fit, so they can, again, continue their education. Now, one thing I do want to point out is if the student applies and is found eligible, it is not that uncommon that they may not receive a payment in the first year, because there is an awarding hierarchy. If you would like additional information regarding our Chaffey Grant or middle class scholarship, we actually do have webinars that we present, and you can sign up for those on our website. This is a snapshot of the bottom of our main or our landing page, csac.ca.gov, that gives you information regarding all of the programs that we administer, from the Cal Grant, Middle Class Scholarship, Chaffey, and then our specialized programs, California Military Department GI Bill Award Program, the LEPD, Law Enforcement Personnel Dependence Grant, and also the Golden State Teachers Grant. All right, I'm going to take a moment here to take a drink of water. While I'm doing that, I'm going to ask you guys another question. So, does your school or organization do any of the following? All right, looks like we've got a little bit over half. I'm gonna go ahead and give it another 15 seconds here. All right, so looks like 80% of respondents show that they have hosted financial aid nights. And coming in right behind them is organizing college fair events and Cash for College. Now, for those that host financial aid nights, we want to point out that you can also host a Cash for College event during the same event, that financial aid night. And if you would like more information regarding Cash for College, we have our Cash for College website, where again you can get additional information and possibly receive site support, which is money that you can help offset putting on the financial aid / Cash for College night. All right, so let's continue. So high schools doing your part. So we know that not everyone here today is working at the high school, but this information can again help you understand some of the mechanics that the high schools have to do. First is our checklist, or I'll say more of a timeline. So in September, you have to provide, or you don't have to, but it's highly suggested that you provide a demographic verification form to your seniors, because what this will do is update your database before you go ahead and submit GPAs, because when it comes to matching the GPA to the financial application, we match using demographic information. And the more accurate demographic information that you upload will lead to a higher percentage of automatic GPA matches. By October 1st, you need to upload, if you're a public and public charters, must upload their GPAs by this time. January 1st, they must notify juniors that in their senior year that they will be uploading GPAs. And if they do not want that to happen, they have an opt-out form or an opt-out process. Weekly, once GPAs have been uploaded and the application is open, you want to edit any unmatched GPAs and match any GPAs that are not automatically matching. Also, you want to continue to stress to your students once they have completed their financial application. And this is with our FAFSA filing students. Within 7 to 10 days, they need to go and sign up for the Web Grants for Students account, because new this year, our Dream Act students, that information, or not information, but their web grants for students will be automatically created for them once they complete their Dream Act application, because that is a in-house application. So our system will be able to do so. But unfortunately, because FAFSA is, a federal application, our system will not be able to do that automatically. But the web grant system, or the web grants, is something very for students. It's very important, because this is where they will be able to maintain information regarding their award consideration, and once awarded, be able to maintain their award. And then lastly, by August 31st, all high schools must verify the high school graduation of any remaining student that has not done so from the past award year. So your last year graduates, if they did not verify their high school graduation, you would do so by by August 31st. This is a demographic verification form. We've already talked about it, but again, by doing this, you update your system to have the most up-to-date demographic information, which again will lead to a higher number of automatic matches and a less amount of students that you will then have to outreach to, because they're not matching automatically because of mismatching demographic information. Now, I know not all schools do this, but if your school district does not do this for you, the schools must again upload their GPAs to our system. Some districts or schools have a system, what's called the student information system, that will automatically create the upload file for them. And if you have such a system, great. But if you have the system but don't know how to use that option, you would want to contact your information system provider, such as Aries or Power Schools, and they would then be able to give you the information on how to do so. Now, like I said, there is that text file that can be automatically created if you have that information system. But if not, we do have a macro enabled Excel program that will allow you to, again, input your information, and it will then create that text file for you. And if you are doing so, we really highly suggest using our non-SSN upload user guide, as it will walk you through this process. And if you had any questions, again, it will actually give you a lot of great information. And then if you still need help, as we always say, please contact us here at the commission and we will be able to assist you. This is a look at, again, that GPA opt-out form. This is, again, something that needs to be done by January 1st for your juniors, to let them know that, hey, in your senior year, we're going to upload your GPA information for award consideration. And if for some reason you do not want us to do so, please complete this form. Pretty straightforward. Again, you will, once the GPAs are uploaded and the applications are live, you will want to, again, weekly either edit any unmatched GPAs if it's known that the demographic information isn't correct, and also match edited GPAs to their corresponding application, because again, until they are matched, the student will not be processed for an award. If you would like additional information regarding this process, we do have live webinars. And again, if you just go csac.ca.gov/trainings, you will have a schedule of our upcoming webinar trainings. This is a look at the landing page for our web grants for students. It is, again, a very important tool for the student, because what this does is, like I stated, it will allow them to be able to monitor the award process. And also it will allow them to understand, hey, was my GPA, uploaded or matched? Because if they go in there and the system says there's no GPA, and they go to their school and the school's like, I know we uploaded your information by October 1, that is the number one indicator that, hey, we need to go in, match these GPAs, because, and again, I would say 99% of the time, it's because of the demographic information being different. We went through 37 slides in just under an hour. We are good. But because we've gone through so much information, we want to give you a break, let this information kind of, soak in. So we're going to give you a 5-minute break here. And after that, we're going to have John hop on and take us through the remainder of our presentation. So on my side here, I have 10:30. So we will see you back at 10:35.
I don't know what you can do in 5 minutes. Finish that last chapter of War and Peace. Maybe, I don't know. So we're going to get started. Thank you guys for hanging in there till the end. We know this is a long presentation. We understand that there's just a lot of information being crammed into less than 3 hours. So we get it, and we appreciate you hanging in there. Anyone who stays till the end will win all the money in the world and a brand new rotisserie. I'm just kidding. The rotisseries are back ordered. That's not going to happen. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing my video. And maybe I am. I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me okay. If the audio is okay, would you type in the chat? John, we can hear you. You sound great. Or something like that. Oh, okay, perfect. All right, cool. Okay, thank you so much. All right, here we go. So we're gonna finish up this thing. I've got, I don't know, 35 slides. So let's do the math. 35 slides, 8 to 15 minutes per slide. I can't do it in my head. We'll get there. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the no Cal Grant zone. You're probably saying, what the heck is that? Well, we had this concept that we wanted to explain. We didn't know what to call it. So we said, let's call it the no Cal Grant zone. And for whatever reason, that sort of stuck. So here you go. And what this is the problem that arises when a student meets either the GPA requirement, but doesn't quite get there on the income, or they have the income, but they don't quite get there on the GPA. So basically, in a nutshell, you need to remember that there are different components to be considered for a Cal Grant. So one of them is the GPA, and one of them is the income. And very oftentimes what happens is that the student's income is high, so they really need to have a 3.0 in order to qualify for a Cal Grant, and that doesn't happen. So let's talk about that really briefly. Okay, here's a little chart. This shows you the income and assets for, actually just the income for the 22-23 academic year. Now remember, we sent you guys a spreadsheet. It has every link to every resource that we're offering, including this. Some of you are saying, hey, where can I get this information? And I'm going to say, hey, we sent this to you already. If you can't find it, send us an email, we'll send it again. Notice the key components here. One, family size, right? So that's an important component. And then the type of program. So we're really just kind of looking at A and B, but notice the huge differences in the income ceilings between A and B. So this information is really mission critical. And the goal, and I'm going to give you some examples of this, but here's the deal. You should be providing this information, to your students very early on. How early? I think the freshman year, right? Because they get to their senior year, they can't do anything about their GPA. And sometimes they leave thousands of dollars on the table. So freshman year, first day of school, mom is dropping off her kiddo at school and the kid says, hey, mom, this is fine. 4 blocks away is fine. Don't embarrass me. All right. She gets out of the car, make good choices. Oh my God, mom, you're killing me. And then the minute they step on campus, you guys should be there. Hey, I got this really cool thing about income. You should check it out. So do it very early. Now let's look at some examples. All right, we have 3 students here, and we're going to just try to determine if they qualify or don't qualify for a Cal Grant. So Jorge has a 2.87, family size 4, and the income is $58,000, right? All right. Now we're going to pull this up as a little poll question. So if we could pull up Jorge's poll question, that would be cool. Jorge, Bueller. All right, I'm not seeing it. Yvonne, can we pull up that question?
Coming, Sarah is typing responses.
Come on, Yvonne, we've only had like 400 questions. Jeez Louise. All right, so we're gonna pull this up. And then I want you to answer whether or not you think Jorge is eligible for a Cal Grant. If so, which Cal Grant he's eligible to receive. All right, someone asked for a Cal Grant C. Oh, all right, Adrian's answering that. I take it back. Okay, so some of you are putting it in the chat. So let's just forego Jorge, Yvonne, and we'll get ready and we'll do Angela here if we can. So Jorge, because of the GPA and the family size, he's eligible for a Cal Grant B, right? 2.0 is the minimum for a Cal Grant. The income is good in the Cal Grant B column, and he doesn't have a 3.0, so he wouldn't qualify for a Cal Grant E. So for those of you that said Cal Grant B, you're correct. All right, let's move on. Angela's GPA is 3.87, family size is 5. The income is 47,000. Oh, there we go. All right, so now we see the poll for Angela. So is Angela eligible for a Cal Grant? If so, which one? Or hint, hint, which ones, he says. Which ones? All right, so most of you are getting this. Angela has a really good GPA, but the family income is relatively low. In this case, Angela actually qualifies for both A and B. Can she get both A and B at the same time? That would be great. No, she can't. Although it would be great. She's going to get one or the other. Which one is she going to get? It really depends what kind of institution she goes to. She goes to a UC, it's going to default to a Cal Grant A. CSU, community college, typically Cal Grant B. Private school, it kind of depends, but there you go. So that's the correct answer for Angela. So if someone said Cal Grant A or Cal Grant B, you're actually correct. She does qualify for those, but probably the best answer is both A and B. All right, Peter, 2.99. That's not a good sign, right? Family size 3, family income 95,000. Does Peter qualify for a Cal Grant? Okay, so yeah, most of you are getting this. So unfortunately, and this is why we talk about this. This is why we need to make this information available. Peter would have had to have had a 3.0 to qualify for a Cal Grant A. So you know what that means? It means that that stupid Spanish class is junior year. Oh, ¿qué pasa con mi español? That Spanish class or whatever class that he didn't pass or had got a really low grade in may have prevented him from getting $12,000, $13,000 at a UC, right? It's crazy. So now we can't really control the income. The income is what the income is. But do you think if Peter knew that he needed a 3.0 to get a Cal Grant A, he would have done something to try to make that happen? I think he would have. All right. This is why we need to share this information. All right. Good job, everyone, on the polls. All right, here we go. So let's talk about taking a gap year. Sometimes our students, for whatever reason, they get a Cal Grant, but they say, I'm not going to start to school in the fall. I'm going to wait a semester. Maybe I'm going to wait a year. Maybe I'm going to wait longer than an academic year. What can they do in that case? Well, what's really important is that they have to put their Cal Grant on hold. You can put a Cal Grant on hold. In other words, you can put a leave of absence or an LA on your Cal Grant for up to 2 years. Why is that important? Because if you don't put it on hold, eventually you could lose that Cal Grant, right? If you put it on hold, you maintain your eligibility. When you start using it, you still have the 400%. Everything is great. So there's a good compelling reason that students need to say, I have a Cal Grant, but I'm not going to use it. I'm going to go to Spain. I'm going to take the fast train from Madrid to Barcelona. I'm going to go to the Familia Sagrada. I'm going to go up in the top of that tower. It's going to be great. And that's cool. But if they do that, they need to put their Cal Grant on hold. How can they do that? Via their web grants for students. Also, CSAC can do it. Also, the college can do it. But it's important that they don't just not do anything, because that can put their Cal Grant in jeopardy. We actually have a little video about putting your Cal Grant on hold. So check it out, and that it's really fairly easy to do. We get this question a lot. A student graduates from high school, they go to a community college. Sometimes we tell them, hey, you should just put your Cal Grant on hold at the community college. Don't use it, keep it. Look at Shakespeare down there, his famous play, To Hold or Not to Hold Your Cal Grant. That is the question. So this student, this is probably the best picture of a confused student I've ever seen. So I really like it. She's going, what the what? What's going on with my Cal Grant? Should I use it? Should I take my Cal Grant B, or should I not use it? So here's the answer to that. Most of the time, if a student has a Cal Grant B, we recommend that they take the Cal Grant the first year for sure. Why? Because even if they put it on hold and then they jump to a 4-year, it's very unlikely that they're going to use or have 4 years left of eligibility. So what we recommend is that, one, if you need the money, you take the Cal Grant. That's not a question, right? If you need the money, you take the money. But if you kind of go, well, I don't know if I need this, but most Cal Grant B students actually do, then we say, take the money the first year for sure. And then after that, evaluate your situation. The caveat, every student is different. Their circumstances are different. There's not a one size fits all, but we want to get away from telling students automatically put your Cal Grant B on hold, because typically that's not the best answer. Special circumstances. Now, we talked about special circumstances early on in the Fafsa section, and a special circumstance is anything that impacts the student's ability or the family's ability to pay for college or to attend college. And there's a lot of things that can fall under that category. So parents get divorced, parent loses a job. We've had 17, 18 months of this horrible COVID situation that's been super impactful for both parents and students. That's a really good reason to go to the college and say, hey, I've had this thing happen. And the college can look at those special circumstances, and they may determine that they can either make an adjustment that will help you get financial aid, or they could possibly even say you're a independent student for financial aid purposes. It really, really depends on the college. But the answer is always the same. When you have these kinds of questions, you talk to the college you're attending or that you're planning to attend, right? Okay. Now, most websites, I want to point this out. Here's Glendale Community College. Most websites have a section about special circumstances. So recommend to your students that they go in and check out the website of the college or the colleges they're thinking about attending. If they have a special circumstance, the school can do what's called a PJ or professional judgment if they believe the student has a legitimate claim. Okay? All right, moving on. Keep asking those questions. I don't have to answer them now, so I really want you to ask a lot. I'm off the hook for the questions. Yay. Okay, some helpful tips and hints. We talk about March 2nd as being the priority deadline. We know that September 2nd now is also an important deadline to complete an application, but you don't want to go, you want to tell your students that March 2nd is the priority deadline. And more importantly, let's not talk about March 2nd. Let's talk about October 1st, when students can first start filling out an application, right? October 1st, you want to just over and over and over again, right? You had those announcements in the morning. Good morning, students. Welcome. Today is Wednesday. Oh, by the way, October 1st, you have to do your FAFSA or DREAM Act application. Every day, just hit them over the head with that. Students should apply regardless of income. This idea that we make too much, you might make too much for certain things. Maybe you make too much for a Cal Grant, but you get a middle-class scholarship. Maybe you make too much for all those things, but you can get institutional aid if in fact you filled out an application. All right. Make sure you put at least one California school on the application. You're going to have students say, no, I'm going to Nevada. I'm going to go to college in Reno. That's great. Right on. Go Wolfpack. And you say, but put one California college, right? At least, at the very least. And they might say, no, I really don't need to because I'm not going to be here. Well, putting a California college is your backup plan. Students will either go out of state and come back, or maybe they determine that they can't go. If they put one California college, they would have been considered for a Cal Grant. That's their plan B. For FAFSA filers, have them go to My Grant Info, about a week after they finish the FAFSA, so they can create an account, confirm their GPA has been uploaded. And then remember, tell students to check their email. This is like, I have kids in high school and middle school, and they have emails, but if I say, hey, did you get the email from, it's like, what is, oh, the email, that's right, that's a thing. So if they're not getting a text, or it's not via, I don't know what, Snapchat or something, they don't get it. But you want to tell students, hey, check your email. And we suggest that you create one email specifically for the application process and for applying to colleges. Because if everything's in one email, right, students maybe are more likely to check it. Everything gets consolidated into that email. We get a lot of questions about this. So, at some point, students are going to start receiving financial aid offers, or sometimes they're called financial aid letters, although most of the time they're electronic now. They may actually be letters. So let's just go through this. When can a student expect to get that offer? At a 4-year, it's going to be 2 to 4 weeks typically after they are accepted. At a community college, it's going to be late spring, probably early summer before they get that information. Can their offers change? In other words, the school says, hey, you're getting this many dollars in this and this many dollars in this. Can that change? Absolutely. So if it's pending a verification, if something else changes, it can definitely change. That's why a lot of those financial aid offer letters say your tentative or your estimated or your pending offer, because it's subject to change. One problem with these letters or with these offers is that there's no rhyme or reason to how they look between the different schools. There's not a standardized look to these. Every single school kind of does their own thing, right? Which is crazy. And it makes it very difficult sometimes to interpret. That's why you want to encourage your students, take your time, look at these carefully, evaluate each one separately before you make a decision. When they get the letters, you want to tell them, start with the full cost. So what is absolutely everything you're going to have to pay for the year? And then look for the free money. That's the Cal grants, the Pell grants, things they don't have to pay back. Yay, that's the kind of aid we like. Once they subtract that out, then they have the net price. So this is what they're going to have to figure out how to pay for this, right? Is it a loan? Do they use savings? Are grandma and grandpa going to write a check? Who knows? And then make sure that they're thinking 4 years or however many years they anticipate being in college. You can scramble to get through that first year, but then the next year rolls around and say, oh yeah, that's right. I got to do this every year. So make sure that they're looking at the long term. Now, we suggest that you use a college cost estimator. There are lots of them out there. UAspire has a really good one. Now, you do have to register on their website to use it, but it's free, so whatever. But there are many of them out there. So tell your students, hey, use one of these. Now you're comparing apples to apples, right? Now you have information in there and you can make a better determination about what the actual cost of attending a particular institution is going to be. Okay, so let's talk about working with at-risk youth. And, at risk is a kind of a really negative connotation. you know, most of these kiddos are going to have opportunities to succeed. So we want to ensure that that's happening, but we want to make sure that we're giving them, you know, kind of the best possible advantages to be able to get into college, get financial aid, stay in college, etc. So let's look at some of these different groups. So foster youth, far and away the cohort that has, or at least one of the cohorts that has the most difficulty, not only, you know, getting into college, but just graduating from high school. So, you know, these kiddos really have a difficult time, honestly, because a lot of them don't have a support system that allows them to, you know, navigate high school successfully, fill out applications, get into college. And when they get into college, only about 3% of emancipated foster youth, you know, even get a college degree. There's tons of new legislation that Adrian talked about to help foster youth and former foster youth. So that's helpful. You know, we want to make sure we're steering these guys in the right direction. There's lots of programs. The community college has a really good program called Next Up. CSUs and USCs also have programs. And then if you go to the California Department of Education website, there are resources there as well. So let's just remember that, you know, these kids, they need help. They need help in order to get into college. So whatever we can do to help is great. Some of you had asked questions about youth with juvenile justice involvement. In other words, young people who have been in juvenile detention, etc. And we want to remember that most of these students, the vast majority, are eligible for financial aid. They can apply to college, they can go to college, right? So this idea that youth who've been involved in the juvenile justice system, you know, can't go to college is false. Most of the cases, they can absolutely go. Remember, there's also been new legislation that will even further this process more. A lot of these kids also are eligible for foster youth programs, because a lot of the students, unfortunately, who end up in juvenile detention are actually foster youth. So you want to bear that in mind. Maybe they can fill out the Chaffey Grant. Maybe they meet the eligibility requirements for the Chaffey Grant or other programs that we have available. So with this cohort, and actually with any of them, you know, let's be proactive, be collaborative. You know, students move around a lot, and I think for, you know, foster youth or kids who have been involved with the juvenile justice system, you know, maybe even more. So we want to make sure we're keeping track of these students, be inclusive, and then, you know, we need to connect them very early to the systems that can help them not only get through high school, but also get into college. And there are a number of resources for these students. Homeless and unaccompanied youth, this is a huge problem. It's crazy. And given what we're still going through with COVID, it's actually even worse than it's ever been. So it's estimated that there are 300,000 homeless youth between the ages of 12 and 17 on any given day in the state of California. And to me, that's a really hard number to wrap my head around, that so many of these young people are either absolutely homeless, living on the street, or they're couch surfing, or they're sleeping in a car. And it's a really difficult situation. So we talked about who can identify a homeless youth. There's lots of people at the high school, at a shelter, a runaway or homeless program, or even the college financial aid administrator can make the determination that this is a homeless youth. We want to make sure they're getting that information on their application, and that obviously that they're filling out an application so that they can get all the financial aid they're entitled to, and so we can match them with corresponding services. The LGBTQ plus group, when we talk about homeless youth, is a group that's impacted probably more than any other, you know, subset of young people. You know, a lot of these kids have really difficult extenuating circumstances, or they've been forced to leave their family home. They're subject to a lot more victimization while they're out on the streets. So we want to make sure that we direct these students as well to resources, and that they have the opportunity to succeed. with all these at-risk students, let's make sure that we identify that they're at risk. Let's connect them to services that will help them and that will engage them in this process to hopefully get them into college eventually. Let's make sure that they're filling out applications, right? Either the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application. And and I know you guys all do this, but we want to make sure that we maintain a structure of stability. Sometimes the stability that these students have at school is the only real stability that they have, right? Remember that a lot of these at-risk youth, obviously foster youth, may be eligible to fill out the Chaffey application as well. All right, poll time. We have another quick poll. So let's pull this guy up and see if we can answer. So this is about DACA. We're gonna talk about DACA a little bit. What do you guys think about the status of DACA currently? So do you not know? Has the program been shut down? I don't see anyone answering. Are we not seeing the poll? Okay. How about now? So the question about DACA, there we go. All right. So some of you, most of you know that there's been some changes around the DACA program. What is the current status of DACA? Do you, maybe you don't know or you're unsure. Maybe you think the program's been shut down. Maybe it's just not accepting new applications. Maybe there's a new program that's taking the place of the former DACA program. So I'll give you a second to answer. Okay, so a lot of you are unsure about what's happening with DACA, and that's understandable because it's so confusing. And DACA has become, unfortunately, a real political football in this country, which isn't great for the DACA kids. So we're gonna talk about DACA here in just a second, but I'm glad we could get your take on it. So let's jump into the AB 540 and the California DREAM Act application. All right, we are on the home stretch, so hang in there. Thank you guys so much for staying with us. Most of you have, so that's awesome. All right, AB 540 and the California DREAM Act application. First of all, who are undocumented students? Undocumented students are not just, we have this idea that every undocumented student, crossed the southern border of the United States. And that's simply not true. Obviously, some of them did. Some of them came in on an airplane with a visa and they simply overstayed that visa. Some of them had DACA previously or have DACA now. And some of them are still in the process of legalizing their status, whatever their immigration status is, as a refugee, as an asylum seeker, etc. So an undocumented student could be anybody. I like this quote at the bottom that no human being is illegal. I really, when I hear that term illegal alien, I feel like I need to correct people because honestly, no human being is illegal. That's just not I don't think is a fundamentally right thing to say about anybody, in my opinion. So I put that on there because I think that's true. Okay. Now, let's talk about the actual requirements for AB 540, right? Most of you know this. If we gave you a test right now, you'd probably fail. Oh my God, what are those requirements again? It's kind of hard to remember, but basically in the past, it was 3 years of attendance at a high school and high school, for example, high school completion. So you were physically on campus and you took 3 years of classes or more and you were good to go. And now that's been expanded quite a bit, right? All right, so option A was this 3 years of high school or 3 years of high school credit plus, 3 years in attendance at a high school. Maybe you're making up some of that time with middle school attendance or elementary school attendance, right? Option B expanded this greatly. So the 3 years no longer has to be at a California high school necessarily. That can be part of it, but we can now use adult school and community college to make up the difference. So what does that mean? It means technically, hey, a high school student doesn't even necessarily have to have graduated from a California high school. If they go to a community college for 2 years, and then, they have, maybe just 1 year of high school, that would qualify them. So now they have some options. It's been greatly expanded. We don't want to get into this idea that, oh no, if you didn't go to high school here for 3 years, you don't qualify, because that's no longer the case. So option A and option B. The community college, you can only use up to 2 years, right? So any combination of 3 years between the high school, the adult school, and the community college will work. Remember, excuse me, I had to clear my throat, and as delightful as that would have been for all of you to listen to, I muted myself. All right, remember that an AB 540 affidavit, which is just a form, is required for all students who are awarded and attending a college or university. No students know what this form is. It is a requirement. You might want to remind them, hey, this is a thing. Make sure you ask the college about it, because it needs to be on file. It's a rubber stamp procedure. It's not a big deal, but if they don't have it, they're not going to get paid. So we want to make sure that they do it. Who can fill out the California DREAM Act application? So undocumented students, obviously, with or without DACA. DACA has zero relevance on applying for financial aid. Temporary protected status. So those, 12 or 13 countries that are currently under the TPS program status. And that means these are countries where the United States has determined people can't return because of some difficult situations, civil war, famine. For example, in Haiti, things are really, really difficult right now, right? They had an earthquake and then a hurricane. And so the expectation is if you're from Haiti, you don't have to return to Haiti right now, because that's virtually impossible. U visa holders as well. Okay, so remember, males still have to, we'll talk about this, do the selective service, those who are between 18 and 25. Now, one really cool thing about the DREAM Act application, which is brand spanking new, yay, and you're going to see significant changes. And it's literally just now rolling out. We just finished the testing. When students complete the DREAM Act this year, beginning October 1st, if they're doing it for the first time, in other words, they're high school seniors, or they're just filling out an application for a first time, that will automatically create their Web Grants for Students portal information. In other words, hey, it's one-stop shopping. They're gonna fill out their California DREAM Act application, and that login information is going to be synced. So it's going to be the same login for both the DREAM Act application and the Web Grants for Students portal. So they're not going to have these two separate logins, which is going to be awesome, right? So that's one of the improvements this year. Yay. Oh, selective service. So this is a little confusing because selective service for federal programs is going away, but for state programs, it's not. That means FAFSA filers and DREAM Act filers who want to have eligibility for Cal grants, for example, or any state aid, still have to complete selective service. Male FAFSA filers can do it directly on the application. Unfortunately, our DREAM Act applicants cannot. You still have to print out that form and mail in that form. And if you're working with that cohort, right, if you have students who are filling out the DREAM Act application, male students, when they are 17 and 3 months old, that's when they can send this in. And they need to do it really early. Why? Because it takes forever to process, forever. So they need to do it early to make sure that they get back that confirmation in time. Sometimes the school will ask for that confirmation, right? If that student's selected for any kind of verification, that could be one of the things they ask for. We had this question this morning, what if a student's parents live in another country? And like we said this morning, if the student is in contact with the parent or parents, that parent still has to provide financial information, right? My parents live in Nepal. Okay, great. Does your dad work? Yes, he does. What does he make? Let's convert that to US dollars. And that's what we have to put on the application, right? So if a student's parents live abroad, but they're in contact, in theory, they need to provide the financial information. Now, if they don't have contact with the parents, right? If they're completely out of contact with the parents, that's a different thing. And they may have to go to the financial aid office at the college to be considered for a special circumstance. Dreamer Resource Centers. If you have undocumented students, please direct them to the Dreamer Resource Centers at the local colleges. Virtually every college in California now has a Dreamer Resource Center or a Dream Success Center or an undocumented student center or something similar. And they're fantastic. The people there are great. They work day in and day out with these students to help them understand financial aid and what they need to do. Here's a picture from the Fresno State website. They have the Dream Success Center, and they do just an unbelievable job. Certainly they're not the only ones, but this shows you some of the things that they do. All right, go Bulldogs. So direct your students to Dreamer Resource Centers. Very helpful, very good information. Like I said, virtually every college in California, at least the public institutions, have resources specifically for undocumented students. Check the websites. Oh, DACA. So recently we had a judge in Texas. I'm not going to get political. I'm saying this over 10 times in my head. I'm not going to get political. A judge in Texas basically ruled that the DACA program is illegal. And so that's impactful, especially in the state of California. You know, California has about 175,000 of the 600,000 approximately DACA recipients in the United States. We have far and away the most DACA recipients in the state of California. But now, because of this ruling, anyone who was in the process of applying or who hadn't yet applied, they're in a holding pattern, right? They're in a holding pattern. So what that means is about 50,000 students right now cannot continue their DACA application, frankly, because of this ruling. It's going to be challenged. There's going to be a lot of legal maneuvering. Hopefully this can actually become a law, and because right now it's still an executive action that President Obama did. All right, so what does that mean basically in a nutshell? If a student has DACA now, they still have DACA, right? They can still continue to benefit from DACA. They can renew their DACA, et cetera. Advanced parole, in theory for certain programs, DACA holders can travel out of the country and have the ability to come back for humanitarian, educational, employment purposes, generally speaking. The real issue right now is that there's no first-time DACA applications. So it's really, really a sad situation for these students, unfortunately. Like I said, we're hopeful that there's some legal proceedings that will overrule that decision in that Texas court, and we'll see, right? Well, frankly, we don't understand why this program just can't continue. All right, we're going to leave you with some resources. We really are in the home stretch now, man, and most of you guys have hung around. That is awesome, right? Okay, so let's go. We're going to get through some resources, and then we're just going to kick you right the heck out of here. Race to Submit. Are you guys familiar with Race to Submit? Do you know you can go onto the Race to Submit portal and you can check and see how many of your students have completed an application, and more importantly, how many have completed an application and that application has matched with a GPA. So here I have Alhambra High School. All right. Mina, who's on our team, is a graduate of Alhambra High School. I went to a high school right down the road, San Gabriel High School. Go Matadors. Only for a couple of years. Maybe that doesn't count. But you can go in and you can check your high school. You can check the high schools in your districts. Maybe there's a high school down the road that you really don't like, right? You can check. Maybe you're doing better than they are. Maybe you can drive by and go, we're beating you. We win. You don't have to do that. Just a thought. If you're interested in seeing more about Race to Submit, we actually have a little video that points out how you can use it and what it looks like, etc. So check that out. CalSOAP is a really important program in the state of California. We have 16 regional consortia serving more than 300 high schools throughout the state. If you're interested in information about where this program is or what this program does, here is the website for CalSOAP specifically. I'm going to guess we have some CalSOAP people on the webinar today. So go CalSOAP. Oh, there we go. See? All right. Good job, CalSOAP. Way to represent. Okay. We also have a program called Cash for College. Many of you are familiar with the Cash for College program. Hopefully you are involved with hosting Cash for College events. If you're not, I'm going to say you kind of should be. It's really important. Cash for College events is where students and their families can come together with us, either virtually or hopefully soon in person, and we can walk them through the application process. We can ensure that they filled out their applications correctly and submitted those applications. How important is that for families who might be struggling with this process? So you want to make sure that you're connected to Cash for College. We offer them as well. So CSAC has their own virtual Cash for Colleges that you can either attend or direct your students to. For more information, check out the website at the bottom. So a lot of credit unions, especially sometimes banks, have resources that are helpful. We work a lot with Travis Credit Union. They have a really good program called Awesome Cause. And these are all absolutely free materials and information for students who are going to college. They also have some scholarships available. I always suggest that you check with your local credit union, right? Because oftentimes they're offering these kinds of programs in your community. Travis has programs that are open to everyone. So feel free to jump on and check out their Awesome Cause program. They also have a lot of seminars and trainings as well. When we all vote, we think, and I personally think, it's incredibly important that young people are engaged in the process, and that means voting. So, and this bipartisan, nonpartisan, not-for-profit organization provides a lot of really good information for students about how they can register to vote and voting and where they can vote. And it's not about who they should vote for or any particular party, but it's just about getting them engaged. You may want to promote When We All Vote or similar organizations. We have an election right now in the state of California, right? And I think it's important that you vote in that. But this is really good information if you want to link this on your website as well. California Community Colleges, right now they have a couple different websites you can check out. Stayenrolled.com, and that's more specific to things that happened around COVID and different information about what's happening now and how you can navigate through the virtual learning that you've been doing. Also, I Can Go to College has information about every single community college, all 100 and somebody help me, 63 maybe, I don't know, something like that. And you can go on, you can check different community colleges and you can check to see what programs they have, what new programs they have, etc. So go to these two sites and you can check all the information. Okay, CSAC offers a number of training resources. Hey, you're doing one today. So we obviously have the annual statewide financial aid workshops. That's what we're doing right now. We have YouTube training videos that are available. We have weekly live webinars on a number of subjects. And so, feel free to check it out. We have the link right there, which is on the spreadsheet that we sent you, if you want to access our YouTube training videos. Engage with us on social media. We've really become relevant recently. Before, I'm going to admit it, some of you may have heard me say this a couple of years ago, our social media, frankly, was awful. It was not good. It was bad. But now we've sort of upped our game. We have a couple of people who are dedicated to social media. We're using it. We now have a TikTok. We have TikTok, right? How cool is that? We have LinkedIn. We have Instagram as well. I don't see that on there, but I know we have it. So check out all of our social media sites. And we hope that you'll connect with us on social media, right? Okay. Today, hopefully, or by tomorrow at the latest, you're going to get our survey. We would really appreciate it if you would complete the survey. If you complete the survey, by the way, you're going to be mailed an electronic version of a certificate of completion for today's presentation, today's webinar. So that's a good reason to take the survey. Also, to be honest, it's really important because your feedback is what we use to determine how we should update or change or tweak the information that we're providing, right? So if you loved today's CSAC presentation, Adrian was the first presenter. My name's John, I'm the second presenter. Let us know. If you hated it, then Skippy and Red, that's our names, that's right, okay. Skippy was terrible, he was horrible, I hated Skippy. Yeah, that's fine, that's fine. All right. And that, my friends, is it. Woo! We did it. So I want to thank you guys for this is a long look. It's a ton of information in a very short period. We are literally just sort of cramming this into your brain, and we know that it's a lot. We're here for you via email. You can contact us at any time. You're going to have questions, and that's fine. Contact us. Hey, I didn't understand this. Hey, can you send me this? We absolutely can. All right. So if you have any questions, here's how you can get a hold of us. You know, the school support email for general questions about your students. The outreach and training email, that's us. So if you have any questions about, hey, we want to do this training, or can you provide us with some information, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that's awesome. So thank you guys. We know this is a lot. When you fill out the survey, you say, man, it was a lot of information in a short time. I'm going to email you back and say, yeah, I told you so. Come on. All right. We want you to have a great rest of your day. It looks like we got through all the 18 questions. Are you kidding me? That's a new world record. All right. So the team did a crazy good job answering the questions. They were fast and furious. At one point we had, I think, 15 or 16 questions in the Q&A box. So really, really, really good. And I think that's it. Contact us if you have any questions. A couple of you have your hands raised. So if someone could check that out, maybe we have something. But yeah, thanks to the team for answering all those questions. That was awesome.
John, I just want to